Okay, welcome back everybody. Welcome to According to Carlo. I have another very special guest today, and I got to thank him for his time today. He doesn't really need an introduction. I think as soon as you see who he is, he's everywhere. Matter of fact, I was on Air Mills Parkway yesterday, and of course, who do I see? Of course, is Sam's picture. So let's talk a little bit about how you started, because you started very close to when I started. I started in '86. I think you were just after me, is that correct?
88, 89, a few years later.
Yeah. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I do tell this story, so forgive me, but I remember you and I were at a Joe Stumpf conference.
Oh, wow, that's a long time ago.
In 1990, 91, because the market had dramatically changed. And we had lunch together. You probably don't remember, but I remember like it was yesterday. And the Constellation Hotel, which is no longer there, we had lunch together, and you said, I go, what are you doing here? Why are you here to see Joe Stumpf? Because I said, I'm trying to learn a few things too. And you said, Carlo, you said, this business is getting to me, and I've got to figure this out, and I want to know how to do it better. And so obviously you figured it out, and you did an incredible thing. So let me first ask you about your brand. Was your brand just built, did you have a plan? Or was it just because of your volume got so big, your brand sort of took care of itself?
Well, I think initially, and I'll just backtrack a little bit, and I'll just give a quick background of how I got into real estate. So I was an avid tennis player, was fortunate enough to get a tennis scholarship, and after that I furthered my education, did an MBA, and I did the corporate gig for a couple years, and I didn't like it at all. I felt, I'm really stifled. I had the Sunday night blues, and I'm unhappy, unfulfilled. I don't want to do this for 40 years. So I said, I'll get into real estate. It's a low cost entry. I like people, I like houses. I don't really have any money, so this might be a good opportunity. And I realized as soon as I got in the business, I love this. I'm not working anymore. I could do this 24/7. I just got to find a way to make money at this now because I really enjoy this, right? And so that was the path. And initially I was trying to emulate a lot of agents that had success. And the interesting thing back then, Carlo, was I talked to realtors who were successful, trying to maybe have a lunch with them and figure out what's, and they weren't that open, right? So I said, if I ever get to a place of success, I want to be very sharing about everything, because there's enough room for people at the top for many people. It's a lot of sacrifices and commitment, et cetera, right? So, but anyway, eventually, I became a first-time buyer specialist, and that's how I started my career. So I was working with buyers that were spending $80,000 to $100,000 back in the day. That doesn't exist today, right? So,
I remember.
But I was so committed and driven because I had a kind of a goal for when I was 15. My dad had a successful business. At age 15, he lost everything, so I was really driven to work hard to take care of them, right? So I had this kind of internal drive that was really, wanting me to succeed. And my dad passed away just shy of 25 years now, but before they passed away, I bought them a place. So I felt very good about that, right? So that was but back to the brand piece was when I started having success, I started putting money back into the business, 10%, whatever.
But the beginning of your success was just hard work.
Super hard work. I was telling my group yesterday, some younger agents on my team, I said, my peak year I sold 200, helped 200 buyers with the real estate. So about 15 a month. I was doing 4 deals a week, Kim Egerton style, right? So that's
I had lunch with her just last month.
So, and that was one of my, people I really looked up to a lot, because she was a crazy buyer agent.
Very much,
So I said, I'm going to be like Kim, and I'm going to be a buyer agent. But I remember getting, I was telling my team yesterday, every Saturday and Sunday, 5 sets of buyers each day, Saturday and Sunday, in the car. I said, I didn't have to be a rocket scientist, but if I could bat 300, that's 3 out of 10. I'm selling 3 a week, right? So
amazing. So, okay, so we talk about this. It's hard work. It's just that's how you get these things started. But the branding part, give me a little more info on the branding. How did you become Sam McDadi? How did everyone just know who you were? Not just we all knew who you were because we would see the MLS sheets and see Sam. But how did the public find out about you?
Well, Rome wasn't built in a day, so it was slow and steady, right? So initially when I started having some level of success, I was putting it back into different marketing opportunities. And I remember once saying, Dave Pagora, who of course, he had all these billboards. I said, I'd never do billboards. That's crazy, right? So, and then here we are, fast forward 30 years later, I, have a lot of, I believe in visibility and all of the above, because I believe if you get your name out there, and people just starting today, you're not going to spend as much as I will today, but you'll spend what I did at the beginning, which is maybe 10% of your income. Put that towards marketing, right? And I remember distinctly, Carl, I was doing a deal, I was actually competing, I was at a Brampton office in Remax, and this agent was really disrespectful, right? and I can't remember his name, but I just remember thinking, I'm going to build a brand so big nobody will ever disrespect me again, right? Because that was a motivation for me. I said, I would be, I'm nice to everybody, I'm respectful. So if I'm doing a transaction with somebody, there's no need to be disrespectful, right? So I said, I'm sure they won't forget my name, and that really fueled me to kind of go all in.
And
right?
that's a great philosophy, because all the business that you've done, the years I got in just a little before you, so we're both almost 40 years. Your name has still been, even when I talk to agents, talk to people, I've never had an issue with you. People don't have an issue. You work hard. You treat people with respect, and not because you're sitting here with me, but you have that reputation. Hardworking guy, respectful, and you take people's calls, and you do what you need to do to make a deal. Because when I first started real estate, the one thing our broker taught us was, back in the 80s, is listen, the other agent, your co-op broker is your friend. You need them to get deals done. And so let's not be disrespectful, exactly like you just said. And it's unfortunate that the market has changed, our business industry has changed, and we can't really depend on that as much as we used to.
Yeah.
So
listen, I missed playing baseball with you back then. This guy's a great athlete.
We had some fun playing baseball. Yeah, those were the good old days. And
they were.
And then I broke my collarbone, so that kind of ended that. Yeah, that wasn't pleasant. So let's just dig a little deeper on how you actually built the brand.
Sure. So initially, when I started putting my back into my marketing, and I was trying to measure every ROI, right?
Yes, of course.
So back then, the Real Estate Book, Real Estate News, Resale Home Magazine, those were the only publications, right?
Correct.
I'm thinking what we spent back then to what we spent today, it's monumentally different, right?
Oh, yes.
So I mean, it was such a fraction in the last many decades back, right? And actually, the Mississauga News was very popular. So actually, I remember Mississauga News, and that's one of the big ones for us. So we realized that was a really visible magazine, and that was
the 2-page spread.
Actually, at one point I went to 4 pages.
Oh, did you really?
So I had 4 pages in every week. So, and we were spending $2,000 per page. So I was like, $10,000 a week, right? We were spending as our business grew, right?
Yes.
But it was crazy because back then that was the real estate Bible.
Yes,
everybody was waiting for their
It was like the Oakville Beaver at Oakville.
Yeah, it was crazy huge, right? So for us, and we started. So initially, when I started marketing, I wasn't even putting my face out there. I was just, here's a loss leader ad in the Real Estate News, 99,000 detached house, and it was actually in Brampton, the G section, whatever, And then from there, after that, I started thinking, I want to get my name out there, right? So I took a billboard, right? And I was, first I just drove by, there's my face. I was kind of excited that I'm there. But then, people started commenting and realizing that, hey, Sam's in real estate, so visibility, right, which was really important. So then I took more billboards. I took bus shelters, right? Then all of a sudden I started going to different places. Oh, you're that realtor, which I wasn't really a byproduct. That was a byproduct. The whole goal was make sure our name was so recognizable that people would think of McDadi and real estate as being synonymous.
Now, is this when you were on your own, or when you had already started building a team?
Yeah, I was building a team. It wasn't Sam McDadi Real Estate at that time.
Of course.
I was with Sutton Group initially for quite a few years.
You went to
then the Remax for like maybe 14 years. Yeah. And then we ventured off to our own operation.
But your original, when you did the original, you were on your own for how long?
So 25 years.
By yourself?
Before a team.
Before you started building a team.
So interestingly, with the team concept, I would say maybe so when I started taking on those buyers, we'll go back. So 5 every Saturday, 5 every Sunday, and then I was working super hard and just whatever it took. I was 24/7 dialed in, right? And at some point I realized I just couldn't handle the volume anymore. So I said, if I'm going to now not provide the same service that I think our clients deserve. So at that time I had a roommate who was like a childhood friend. We were staying at Kenneth, paying $900 a month, $450 each. That's where we were back then, right? And
Amazing.
I said, Marty, you should get your license. I need some help, right? So he was actually a PhD in sociology, so he shifted courses, right? And then he got his license, and then my banker and lawyer left their practices, and they became part of so we had 4 at that time, right? And I thought initially, hey, we're going to be a group together, we're going to be kind of equals, but then it became apparent I was the driving force. I was the workforce, I was the worker, right? So, that was a great starting point, but back then, we didn't have models, we didn't know what the splits would look like, we didn't know any of that, right? So we're just it was trial and error for us. Where today you've got all the manuals, models, so it changed a lot, because back then, Craig Proctor was a guy I looked up a lot, who was a very successful, team leader, one of the pioneers.
Of course.
And so that was, for me, the guy I wanted to emulate, and I remember at a Remax convention, when I first joined Remax, Peter Coffey, who was our broker at the time.
Of course, performance.
He said, Sam, come with me, I'm going to take you to a Remax gala. And there the lights went on, and everybody, the top 10 and this and that, and I was just enamored. I said, oh my God, Peter, this is what I needed to see. This is going to drive me. I want to be at the top of the class, right?
That's cool.
But I think for me, as we started, seeing the visibility and what it brought to us, then I started amping that up. I kept going bigger and bigger on that, right?
So when you went on your own, Sam McDadi Real Estate, you were how many people when you left Performance?
Maybe about 20-ish.
Okay, so you were that big at Performance.
Yeah,
Okay,
we started growing.
Wow.
Yeah, we started growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many are you now at Sam McDadi?
Well, we've got about 60 realtors that work with us, and we were just talking about that probably 2/3 are productive, active. The bottom third, we have to, keep them moving.
Those are pretty good percentages, by the way.
Yeah, maybe I'm being,
Those are pretty good. I wish I had those same percentages, but we're working on that. So,
for sure.
But that's great. So people just want to hear. They just love to hear these stories, because you are, when we watch a Raptor game, when we watch a Blue Jay game now, we just see you all the time, and it's fantastic. And I think it's great. And you have a great reputation, so it's great for our industry to see that. So Sam, tell me, when did you sort of stop thinking that you're just an agent and then you became a brand? When did that happen?
I don't know if I can put a specific date, but I think it was an evolution. So as we started to have success, we grew the team, we had the right players with us. Then as we started marketing, I said, okay, now we want to be this brand that is identifiable and synonymous with real estate. I think there's some really good brokers out there, but they don't do enough branding and marketing so that, somebody knocks on the door, I'm with, I don't want to mention companies, but let's say ABC Real Estate, right? And what do you do? Who are you guys? Companies like Royal LePage, Remax, I mean, they're very identifiable. People know as soon as you say Royal LePage, it's real estate. Remax, it's real estate, right? And, we hope on this, McDadi Real Estate. I mean, that was kind of the driver, obviously a smaller scale because Remax and Royal LePages are big.
But you've done okay. You've done okay with competing with them, I think. Because, we all know Remax and Royal LePage, of course, but we all know McDadi too.
We've tried hard for that to make sure we're part of that conversation.
So that brings me to this issue of ROI. You mentioned ROI. So how do you determine? I think the people listening want to know, how do you determine what your ROI is? Because you promote. I don't even want to know what your expenses are in terms of what you promote, because I see you everywhere. So every time I see you, I go, wow. I can just imagine what that costs. How do you determine that ROI? Because I don't think realtors generally are very good at that. Because they just want to really get their name out there and get them promoted. But I always say, well, why are you doing that? What is it getting to you? And so tell me how you figure that out.
Well, when we're marketing, the thought process is what's the objective, right? So obviously ROI is an important piece of the puzzle, but there's some times where I'll say, listen, the visibility is worth the exposure, all that, it really has merit. So even if we're 1-to-1, it still makes sense.
Right.
But obviously we're not looking for 1-to-1 typically. We'd like 2, 3, 4-to-1. And when we find something that's really successful for us, that's where we're like, okay, we're all in. We're going to quadruple what we did, right? But sometimes it becomes more difficult because we market in so many different places. We're on TV.
You're not sure what.
Look, we see you everywhere, right? So and I don't want to drill down to what do you mean everywhere? Tell us where, how. We're happy we got the call, and then from there we kind of hopefully convert to an opportunity and success, right?
I guess when you spend X number of dollars on your promo, obviously more than that comes in, we hope. We all hope that.
Well, I would say in the early years, it was really easy to identify ROI. So, we had 3 or 4 places we were marketing. We'd always ask where that lead's coming from. We'd know, okay, this is giving us a disproportionate number of opportunities. This one's not really working. We'll give another 3 to 6 months. We'll back off. We'll increase here. But as we start, for example, now we're the official broker of the Raptors. We're, pretty visible with a lot of the sporting events. And, we do a lot of marketing at ABC, DF. So when they call, we just want to call you because you're everywhere. And so, sometimes it's hard to drill down, know exactly. Obviously, if it comes from, we saw you on the sign, we saw it, we can say, well,
you can identify.
You can identify it a little more
this
easily.
Is working. Yeah. So tell me, obviously your focus is visibility, but conversion's got to be key. Otherwise,
well, I think visibility leads to conversion. So I think that's for us the formula, because I think we were very visible with all our marketing, and that has to lead to conversion. Right. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to be visible without conversion. And if you have the conversion,
then you say, hey, the visibility must have worked. Yeah, for sure.
Listen, I believe there's a lot of really good agents out there that are invisible. Right?
Yes.
And I think they need to get out there. And you're not going to be able to do it at the scale we do it today,
right,
but do it at a smaller scale and grow that as your business and revenue grows. Yeah. If you believe this is the business you want to be in and you're invested for another 40 years and you feel that way, then you should be reinvesting in your business constantly at the scale that you're comfortable and you can afford to do.
Of course, it's just relative to what you're making, but you're absolutely right. You have to continuously improve and continuously invest in your business. We do this all the time as a brokerage. You need to do it as a brokerage, but you need to do it as your brand, for sure. Sam, when you and I started, we had pagers.
The big phones.
You probably had a
phone.
With those phones. I didn't have a phone till my third year.
Oh, wow, okay.
And we didn't have a fax machine until my second year, so at the office. So now, can you just imagine you and I starting way back then and now thinking about social media? So, we still push, obviously, social media has become a very important factor. That's why we're doing what we're doing. But ultimately, how has it affected your business, and how do you see it going forward for the everyday agent, for the agent out there today?
Well, I think if you don't embrace it, you're in trouble. I think social media and AI are two things people have to delve deeply into,
100%.
right? So I think that's the future, and you've got to be on all platforms, and you have to understand how to market properly and effectively. And so even with our team, I'll say, guys, if you're getting a good message on social media, if you have 20 followers, you better grow your following count, because that's not a big of target audience, right? So I think you have to have a good audience, do it organically, don't buy. Like people say, I bought 10,000. That's not the way you build your business. It should be organic and authentic, but the messaging, all that, social media is critical now. I think you've got to embrace it, and I think you have to have proper social media managers who build your business to the scale it should be at, right?
Yeah, for sure, and it's critical. And talking about the AI, someone said to me, don't worry about AI if you're a realtor, but worry about the realtors who know how to use AI. That's who you should be worried about, because I don't think AI is going to replace us, but you just need to know how to use it effectively.
Well, there's so many efficiencies that can be created now. Like when you understand that and you drill down, and I'm not an expert, we're getting a lot of people to come to talk about its different opportunities. We're trying to understand which is the best fit for us, but it's really crystal clear. You've got to embrace that and understand it and be ahead of the curve, because listen, 30 years ago, print was the be-all, end-all, right? If that's what you stayed in, you're a dinosaur. You're out. You're extinct, right? And things are changing much quicker than when we first got in the business.
So your agents individually would have their own Instagram accounts?
Of course.
So they're doing their own promo under your flag, of course?
Yes.
Okay.
And it has to be branded,
of course.
in terms of the content has to be brand approved, etc. So, but we encourage them to do that, and that's very important. Yeah. And I think we'd like to see them grow their following count too, because 10, 20 followers is not a big enough target audience.
You need
tens of thousands and hopefully hundreds of some point. And we feel should be much bigger than it is too, to be honest. Like we've got a reasonable following count, but we should be bigger.
Yeah, you have an amazing count. You still have an amazing count. I know you're probably never happy, but you have an amazing count.
Can't be happy ever.
You have an amazing count. Okay, so Sam, tell me about the newer agents today, because that's a lot of people are listening, and do they overestimate the social media aspect versus the relationship aspect? The relationship aspect, which you and I know, that's got us where we are today. It's relationships. It's still relationships. Are they overemphasizing socials over relationships?
I don't know if they're overemphasizing. I think sometimes they think that's the be-all, end-all, and I still think you have to get in front of people. And interestingly, with AI, we're just going to digress a little bit, is AI, it's now, there's so many people with avatars that they impersonate us like we're us. Yes. So the face-to-face meeting becomes even more important because it shows that's really you. Because even I'll look at AI or social media sometimes, is that AI? Is that Ronaldinho? Is that not him? I can't tell anymore. They're so real, so the face-to-face kind of eliminates that. So social media is very important, but not at the expense of the personal relationship.
100%. So Sam, I come to you and I say, look, I'm starting brand new. I take you out to lunch. I'm a brand new agent. I've heard you give me the time of day. And I say, I'm just brand new. Tell me, what would you recommend I do starting day one?
Well, I would say you got to find your passion within the business. So, we used to have mastermind groups, and some would love to door knock. Some would go after expiries. Some would like to get their brand right. So I think before I'd even answer, I'd want to understand what their sweet spot is, right? Because if I get you to be a farmer, but it's not sustainable, and you don't really like to do that, well, you're going to bow out after 3 to 6 months.
Very true.
Farming's not going to work until you're in it for a year or two, and that's when you start seeing the benefit of your hard work. So I think, you want to understand within the industry of all the different segments, which one you're going to really flourish in, right? And I think for me, for example, I'll just go back when we first got in the business a few years after you. You still look great, by the way. And
thanks. But, sure, I wish.
You do. So I remember January of, I think it was 89, and I said, I want to get 2 listings in January, right? And January 31st, morning of, I had no listings, right? And so then I said, okay, what am I going to do? I went after a FSBO and an expiry. I got 2, right? Amazing. And one was an expiry, one was a FSBO. Constitution and agonists, they weren't exactly, but I just wanted to get my goal, right?
100%.
So, and in February, I did 5 deals, right? And I was agent of the month at our office. I was at Home Life before I went to Sutton Group. People said, oh, you must have family, I said, no, just hard work. I'm just committed to doing this. I didn't know anybody. But they assume, because a lot of people, unfortunately, our business industry sometimes has people that are a little bit complacent, that they want to get there, they're not ready to pay the price, and there's a big distinction, right? So, and you have to know why. Why am I doing this, right?
So, you know, I get in a lot of trouble for this because in my office, I always say, guys, you don't know. So the market we're having now, when we had this in the 90s, differently, but it was tough. And you started at that point. So you really had to grind it out. I mean, I did the late 80s. I had the enjoyment, Caniff Crescent. I sold 100 condos in 2 years. In 88, in 87, 88, I sold 100 condos on 3,700, 3695 Caniff Crescent.
That's insane.
But they were 80, 90 grand a piece, as you know. And I thought this world was easy. I thought real estate's easy. I was 21 years old, 22, 23 years old. But you know and I know that that's not, you know, you learned in the tough times. And I always say, you know, the Loretta Finneys of the world, the Sam McDaddies of the world, they became who they were in the early 90s because they were grinders. They worked hard. They kept at it. And they created a brand and a name for themselves. I find now with agents, like we make this joke that, hey, you've only been in the business 25 years, oh, you're brand new. Because you don't know what we went through in the 90 to 95. Because we've just had, let's be honest, we've had little blips, but otherwise it's just been straight up. And so that's what I find to be a real challenge. And you talk about grinding it out and finding their pillar that they'll work on. But I find that to be really hard, especially when we hire new agents or agents that are struggling today, how to get them more motivated because it's just been a little bit too easy for them.
Well, I tell our team, listen, if you had success in 21 after COVID and people found their bearings, et cetera, don't think you're necessarily a great agent. You might be, you might not. You're an order taker. I mean, at the end of the day, you're filling an order. There's 40 offers. I mean, it was not that difficult because the market was so fluid, right? Where today, you've got to be creative, innovative, think outside the box. This separates the men from the boys. This market does, right? And I think when the market's really strong, sometimes we have this belief, oh, I'm so good because, that, and maybe you're just a byproduct of a good market, right? So this market really tells who's going to succeed and who's not.
I always say we're not that smart, but timing is good.
Yeah, we had, you're right, we had a couple of great decades, right? Where things were really...
And if you're not grinding it out, especially in these times, and you and I have been through that. So, it taught us a lot on getting through that.
Listen, early 90s, which we went through. So going back, I did those 5 deals, and I was really excited. Back then I had, somebody I was seeing from South Carolina, and we went down to Mexico. Acapulco was a kind of hot spot back then. I said, making money is kind of easy. I don't know what this fuss is all about.
Yeah.
I came back 2 months later, April of '89. The rates went to double digits. I'm like, the market's turning on us now,
and that was the worst and best thing that happened to me. I sold all these condos, and I'm going, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And then, whoa.
Oh, yeah. Well, because we thought it was easy. Like, it looked like it was going to be an easy, this is not hard, this, that. Yeah. And then we had 5, 6 years. And I remember in 90, 91, I'd tell buyers, the best time to buy the market. And every year I was proven wrong because it kept going down. So we had 5 or 6 years of difficult times, but that's where you learn in an adverse 100%. Market.
I tell people, I sold a guy a house in 92, and in 95, he's losing 100 grand. And even in those days.
And that's a big number.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And I said, we charged 6% commission in those days. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that on camera, but that's what we did. And the guy's losing 100 grand. I go, have that conversation. But that's what we did, right? It's amazing. And today,
today you can see a lot of the pre-con world's upside down. The prices are, dramatically different. And so we're seeing shades of that. I mean, in different sectors, right? Yes. The condo market's more hard hit. I think the freehold, opportunities are, I think that market hopefully is, bottomed out, and hopefully we start seeing a bit of a lift.
Definitely we separate the grinders from the people who are not willing to do what it takes. Okay, so Sam, as your career grew, what are things that you did that you think that you've experienced with so many agents that work for you? You've seen so many agents out there. What is it that you did that you don't think agents are doing today or prepared to do today?
I'll even go back my early days. So back then we didn't have GPSs, we didn't have that. So Friday night, I'm in my mid-20s, Sammy, let's go out, we're gonna have a fun time, and we've got all these people ready to, I said, no, I got showing Saturday, I have to do a dry run. I wanna figure out all the properties are, I don't wanna look bad, and I wanna make sure all the schools are, so when I'm showing, I look like a professional, right? So I don't know these streets, otherwise I'm not gonna pull my Pearlies or, whatever, McNally's maps, and so I want to be a pro, and I want to make sure I gave it my all, right? So, and I think a lot of realtors want the easy way out. Listen, I spoke once, Carlo, to a group of 8,000 realtors, right? And I said to them, listen, I'll share all the nuggets I have, and hopefully at the end of this week, when you guys are finished this, platform, that you don't just go back to your day-to-day, right? Most people do that. Hopefully if I can impart change to 2 or 3, I think it's been a successful visit for me, right? Because most people, as you know, they get all raw, and then they go back to their same routines, right?
It's human nature.
December 31st, they set a goal, January 1st, I'm going to have this diet, I'm going to do this, I'm going to work out. Every gym knows, hey, we'll be busy January, February, by April, May, they're all gone, right? So that's the pattern, right? Because most people don't have discipline. My distinction, I think I'm the most disciplined person. When you tell me to do something, that's it. My diet, my lifestyle, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't have coffee, I don't have sugar, I'm a biohacker. So, and I think being healthy, which is really an important piece, is critical. When we're 25, we don't think about it. As you get older, you realize, hey, what separates me today from people, my age bracket is that, I've taken such good care of myself that I feel like I'm a 25-year-old operating. I don't feel like I'm tired. I've got a ton of energy.
Nutrition's key.
Well, listen, 100%. I've got a chef that everything I eat is organic, and so I'm very, all that stuff. So yeah, I put a heavy emphasis on that.
Our business is stressful. It's extremely stressful. It's very competitive. And if we're not physically in the right mood or the right shape, it makes it that much more difficult, no question about it.
I think just philosophically, for me, success isn't just having financial success. It's, the whole being well-run. It's, being, philanthropist, physically, family, all of the above really define success. Somebody's successful financially, but it's not a nice person, this and that. I don't view that as success. I wouldn't care to know them. Yeah. I've got a good friend, George St. Pierre, who's a UFC fighter, right? The nicest human being,
I met him at a golf tournament in the East Coast, in Charlottetown, and he was amazing.
Great guy.
I just walked up to him. I said, Mr. St. Pierre, I said, oh my God. I said, can you take a picture? So I have a picture of him with him, and he was the nicest, most approachable guy. Yeah. And this guy, meanwhile, he's a fighter.
Yeah. Well, he's
in all your. Obviously you're good friends with him because I see him in your ads.
He's become a dear friend. But so what he said to me once, the first time he was in my place, we're having lunch. He goes, Sam, I don't judge people how they treat me. He goes, I know, and he wasn't talking like cockily. He's just, but people are treated a little differently, right? I watch how they treat the janitor, how they treat the waiter, 100%. How they wait, and that tells me if I want to get to know them or not, because that tells you who that person is, right? And I think in life, be nice to everybody. It actually feels better, and it feels nice to be nice and smile versus because life is tough, right? So be nice to people. I think should be the cardinal rule.
Yeah, no question about it. And then in this business, that'll carry with you, and it just makes your life so much easier.
Carl, I'll tell you, that's just been my makeup and my DNA. But there's times, people are at the grocery store. I just, hey, I wave. Not think. They'll call me a year later, Sam. I saw you at the grocery. You don't remember me, but you're really nice. We want to list with you.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it for that reason. Yeah. But by being nice, a lot of good things happen.
Yeah,
right. So
it's amazing with that. How do you stay consistent?
Well, I think it's even more important today than ever. So whatever your habits are, you got to double down, right? So I think when the market's strong, it's easier to be not consistent because it's just coming to you. I think this market, you've got to do everything and be dialed in completely. So I tell our team members, and just like you said, Carl, we have our team meetings every week, and you can see people are sometimes, the younger agents, they're a little confused. What's going on? Because you can't manufacture sales as easily as you could in the old days, right? But I said, guys, you got to get back to the basics, do everything day in, day out. Are you working 40 hours a week? And they'll all say, yeah, but I don't think they are, right? I think they're putting 10 or 15 hours a week. And I said, guys, you've got to make sure you're true to yourself. Because I can tell you say to me you work 40 hours. If you're not, you're just cheating yourself, right? So you've got to be dialed in. Whatever you're doing, and we talked about this earlier, whether you're going to be dialed in on expiries or farming, commit to 40 hours a week. And if you are honestly committing to 40 hours, you'll succeed, regardless of a bad. Because everybody has to buy and sell. It doesn't really matter.
Sam, I tell people, we had a lousy year in 25, so-called lousy year, 60,000 ends, 60,000 deals on the Toronto Real Estate Board. I said, that's 120,000 ends. I said, go get 10 of them. There's 120, I know it was awful, but 120,000 ends, just get 10. Don't say it's out there.
The problem is everything in life is a mindset. It's a mindset, right? So if they say, the market's bad, and you start believing that, and you're now not going to do what you're supposed to be doing, that's where you're going to fail, right? Winners don't have that mindset. Winners overcome any obstacle. And it's not sometimes easy.
No, it's not easy.
Let's be honest.
If it was easy, we'd all do it.
Of course. And so, but you've got to be prepared to suffer, to pay the price for success. And if you're ready to do that, you will have success. Anybody can be here to me, Sam McDadi, in 20 years, 10 years, but you have to pay a price. It's a bit of a heavy price to pay, right? But if you enjoy the journey, it's a worthwhile price.
Yeah. Okay, so today, tell me, what's one thing agents are ignoring today that can right away increase their production?
I believe, I don't know if it's right away, but I think the big misstep for many people today is they're not doing a good enough job with their past database, right? Database management is so critical. So critical. I'll tell you, I went from a period where I was just doing everything myself, and I knew at some point I'd burn out. I was writing the ads, I was qualifying everybody for GDS, TDS. I was like crazy. I said, I think I need to kind of maybe shift and bring some people on, right? So, and I think when I brought an administrator, that really freed me up. But today I have one girl, Linda, all she does, every day we go through our past clients. Some, we revive deals or buyer or listing opportunities that are 10 years in the pipeline, right? So people are just looking for the red hot lead, the Glengarry, Glen Gross, kind of syndrome. But I think at the end of the day, if you realize, hey, real estate, you're in this for the next 30, 40 years, right? And the client base is such a critical piece, and they underestimate that in, whatever, CRM you're using. You have to really be true to that, because otherwise you're not gonna have success. Because I'll tell you right now, I'll go on a CMA 6 months ago, and I'll forget that. I have my reminders, right? And I quote everything. Here's the fee structure, here's the price, here's this, because otherwise we're gonna be lost, right? So, and I think everybody, depending on your scale of business, you want to obviously grow the amount of people in your database, but it's so critical to keep on top of people.
And I bet you if I asked you this, and this is one metric that I find very interesting, people at your level, is how many people have done 5 or 10 deals with you? I'm sure you have a lot.
Well, I'll share one story, and this is, I remember when I was doing the first-time buyer, ads, 99,000. I showed them a place at Roche Court, which is one of the places I was promoting, and then I said, let me take you somewhere else. I'm not sure this is the best place for you and your family. We ended up selling him something else, a townhouse for 100,000 back then. He was so appreciative. And I tell my team, listen, this was a $100,000 transaction. 30 years later, there's probably been 50 transactions for that one person in the funnel, right? So think about treating, here's where people misunderstand. I don't want to do a rental. But a rental, listen, do the rental. At the end of the day, who do they have as parents, as friends? Provide really good service. They might buy next year, exactly. Don't worry about the dollar out volume. Worry about that relationship building. If you do that, you'll have success. Because sometimes they're too married to the dollar and the financial outcome. That's a big mistake.
Correct.
The money will take care of itself. And I know it's a cliche, but it really is true.
No,
it really is true.
Cliche. It really is true. It's a fact.
Yeah.
I tell people, the rentals become deals. And it's a relationship. We're just trying to build relationships.
And I tell our team members, let's say you did 20 rentals. When we're younger agents, we give them a lot of rentals so they get their feet wet, blah, blah, blah. Say, listen, a year later, let's see if they're ready to buy something. And counsel them, maybe even 6 months into it. Go have a meeting face to face.
Build your CRM.
For sure. And all of a sudden, you're building your pipeline, and it's going to grow and grow.
No question. Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier about your reputation, which is fantastic. How do you protect that reputation?
Well, we want to make sure it's from the bottom up, right? So everybody who's working for us has to protect the brand. And the part we can't control is how agents are operating outside, right? So, and if we get, complaints, and on a recurring basis. So we had a couple agents that were very successful. This was going back maybe 10, 15 years ago. They worked with us, and I had a few complaints, and I brought them in. It was a husband and wife team, and I said, listen, guys, we've got these complaints. I mean, we've worked way too hard to build our brand, and we've got to protect our brand. If we're not doing that, then there's not going to be a home for you guys. And so at the end, a month or two passes, I get 3 complaints in one day. I brought them in. I said, and I'm thinking, what am I not hearing about, right, if that's happening?
Right.
So I said, guys, how are you guys doing for us? And I said, we're doing really well. We're making, we're making a lot of money, blah, blah. Okay. I said, today's your last day. I said, the money is secondary. There's 3 complaints in one day. You can take a few weeks, find a new home, but we're not going to sacrifice our hard work, earned reputation that's taken, decades, because it takes decades to build it. It takes one bad experience and you're shot all the way down, right? So, so to us, we're so very protective of our brand because that's really what integrity is all you have. That's critical, as you know, and that's why you've been around so long, right?
So, and so we live by that here too, and it's fantastic to hear that. And unfortunately, I've had to let people go who are even big producers. It just gets to a limit where it's not about the money anymore, because it's dangerous.
It really is dangerous. Yeah.
So, Sam, what's your advice to a very eager, ambitious agent who wants to build their name today?
No, Rome wasn't built in a day. Yes. So I think you have to work hard in this business, start to have some level of success, and whether it's going to be, we talked about expiries, working with buyers, working with sellers, find your niche within the industry. And as you start building that, then you reinvest to build your brand, right? So brand identity doesn't happen overnight. No. I mean, it's going to take some years to get to a level where you have huge brand identity, but even on a smaller scale, if you're farming, build a really strong brand identity within your farm area and start growing that.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you need a long view. You have to have a long view. Because if it was that easy and Rome was built in a day, everyone would do it. And it's just not that simple.
No.
So it's discipline and commitment, and you got to stick with it. And farming, geographic farming you really got to stick with it, because that takes a lot.
So we used to support a lot of the team members farming, and we'd support the whole farm, et cetera, and we found that invariably 80 or 90% would give up prematurely.
100%.
So we said, we're not doing that anymore. You're going to pay for the farm. If you do deals, we'll, if you actually stick it, then we'll come back in, right? Because it's really easy if you're cutting the check for everybody to say, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And so you have to have a level of accountability as well.
Of
And that way you're holding them accountable to the dollars as well.
Great. Okay, so Sam, tell us what's next for you, and what does the next level look like for you?
So we're really happy where we are today, but never complacent.
Yeah, obviously. I got that message.
We have to keep going, right?
I got that message.
So, when we first, started off, we were in Mississauga, and that's our home, our place. We have a north and south office. We expanded to 7 offices now through the GTA. So we're really proud of, what we've done, what we're able to, part of me thinks now, what's the next step? I love what I do, and I still want to be in the trenches. I like selling. It's not like I'm, teaching my team from afar. I'm in there. I'm probably working harder than any team member. But, there's thoughts, at some point, do we build a REIT? Do we, maybe go and share advice to people, within the industry? So, I mean, those things are always on the table. But, life is short too, right? So you want to try and find balance. I'm enjoying now. We've got a nice place in Florida. I go there monthly, and I want to, keep a good work-life balance now because we've done the heavy lifting. And by the way, nobody ever sees the journey. They see when you get there, right? They see when you're there. Oh, you lucky guy.
You're there. Yeah, you're lucky.
You go to all the games, and well, you didn't see the 35 years of not even taking one vacation for a decade and all that stuff. They just see when you get there, right?
That guy's a first-line center. It must have happened yesterday.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, but we're really happy where we are and want to stay healthy, happy, and keep contributing and enjoy the journey.
And giving. And the fact that you're here talking to us, and I've never heard a bad word in terms of how you operate, and just doing this for us and sharing this information, I think that the audience will appreciate it. And we really appreciate you doing this, Sam. I really appreciate it.
And
it was great
happy
to
have you as a friend for 40 years, and let's keep the journey going.
Thank you, my friend.
It's a real pleasure.
Okay.